Hey everyone, how's it going? My name's Joe. I'm from Story by Joe, and I have a lovely guest with me today named Mel. Say hi, Mel.
Hello.
And we're going to be going over tonight's topic, which is murder documentaries, murder stories, and just murder stuff in general. I am new to the genre. I've never really been a fan of it myself. And the main question I brought you on for tonight, and the one thing I'm kind of hoping you could talk about is what is it that drives people, specifically I know yourself, to enjoy these type of documentaries? For instance, before I jump in on you, I always get sad every time there's a murder story or there's like it's just so what is it? Let me shut up and ask. What is it for you that you enjoy about the genre?
So funny enough, whenever you posed the question to me, and I know we didn't get into it because we were saving it, my answer resonated with the crowd answers that I got, which is honestly awareness. I think it's it's kind of well known that social norms for a very long time have dictated women are generally more submissive
Mm.
in life. Obviously, everybody, as time has changed, things have changed, but especially like back in the 70s and stuff. So when you go and you think about like for instance, Ted Bundy's a perfect example. Bundy, whenever he was, finding his victims, he was asking them to, like, help him with stuff, and these women were just like, "Yeah, okay, I'll help you." Like, he's pretending to have, like, a arm in a cast, and he can't carry his books. "Can you help me carry my books to my car?" The women
Mm.
are like, "Yeah, sure," and then they don't come back. They get hit over the head and thrown in the back of the car.
She's making me sad already. It's been like 2 minutes. I'm already like, I just want to know. Just stop. Don't go to the car.
Exactly. But see, that's the thing. As you learn more about techniques that were used, you can kind of have it in the back of your mind if you're ever in that kind of situation in the future. Because even back to Bundy again, like he pretended to be an officer once and told this lady that her father had been in an accident and he was gonna take her right to him and at the hospital. And she's, in a panic and she's worried about her father. She goes with him even though he's not in a police car, he's in a VW Bug.
Mm.
And, so it's like it goes to show you can't trust everybody, and having the information of what has happened in the past can prepare you for the future. So it's really just kinda goes down a lot of times to awareness.
Yeah, I had a former partner that I'd be coming home from work or I'd interrupt and watch and see what she's watching and it was usually like SVU and it was just the most gruesome either sexual abuse or murder situation and she's just like casually eating dinner and chicken nuggets and I'm just like how is this entertaining? This sounds horrible. Like I want to stop my day and pause and think about what this was and it's oh there'll be another one in 30 minutes. I'm like this is
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I guess it like you said, it was awareness. Is it more of an awareness like, "I hope this never happens to me," or is it more like, "I'm planning to kill the men in my life?" Like, which of the 2 would you say it leans towards?
Well, the funny thing was when I was doing my little crowd research, there were men in the area as well that were weighing in on the topic. The
Okay.
women's answers were very much what I told you about, you know, trying to get the upper hand. Maybe it provides us with this false sense of security as well, because it's like, oh, okay, we can recognize these things so they won't happen to us in the future. But a million different ways, somebody can get in trouble. So, the man that wanted to volunteer his answer, who also said that he was into watching true crime stuff. He's he should be on a list, I think, because the first thing that came to his mind was, "I wanna know what's going on in the killer's mind." Like, I imagine kidnapping people, and then he added, "or being kidnapped," and we're all kinda like, "Huh,
Interesting. So
exactly what you wanna hear."
so the man you surveyed thought about the perspective of the killer, the women you surveyed thought about the perspective of the victims.
Yeah, basically. But obviously, this is not to kind of persecute men in general. That's obviously one example. And you can even go into the example of the women who get caught in the aftermath of a serial
Mhm.
killer getting caught and like going to the court, and writing them in prison and like very much kind of
Yeah, what is that? That's such an interesting fascination to me. I mean, I feel like if I found out a dude was committing some type of like crime out there and then all of a sudden or let's say there was an attractive female that was committing crime. There's a mug shot of a lady that goes around every once in a while. Like she's really pretty over a couple years. It's like 9 mug shots. It always makes the rounds. I'd never want to talk to her. She sounds like she makes terrible life decisions. I have a ton of people in my life that make terrible life decisions without court cases. So I guess, and this is not you, and I'm not attempting to say this is you, and I'm also not attempting to say you're a voice for all women, but being someone that is a content creator, and I believe is going to be doing more content around true crime in the future, not to spoil too much, I'll let you speak into that, but can you even guess or maybe postulate or you just throw out there the idea, what do you think the mindset is like for these people that write them the letters and become the pen pals? Do you have any thoughts? Have you ever thought about that for a bit?
I do, and I think honestly, as simple as the explanation is, it can go 2 ways.
Mhm.
So, it goes to kind of, I think women historically are more the nurturing type, and some are attracted to bad guys, but some honestly convince themselves that these men are innocent. Like, Ted Bundy is a good example again, where, during his spree, he had a girlfriend, and she is actually the person who kinda reported him to the authorities, and they didn't look into it, and then eventually found out that she was right, and she was kind of forced into to turning him in by friends just because all these coincidences, you know?
Hmm.
She didn't actually think her boyfriend was a killer, and then finds out that it was true, but, after he got caught and all of that, there was a person that he had met during his time before he was a notorious killer. Well, he was still killing, but they didn't know. And, she was this, kind of woman, she had kids, or I think she had a kid, and, they were friends, but by the time, he's been convicted or is in court, well, at least, like, they kind of get together, and he's telling her he's innocent, "I didn't do any of this," and she's believing him.
Hmm.
And, eventually she gives it up before he gets executed, and she's like, "Yeah, no, it's not true, you're guilty." But sometimes it's just, like, blind faith in an individual. Like, I'm
Hmm.
sure we've all been in relationships where it's like, you see the writing on the wall, but you just have so much faith in the person and the future that you can't let go of it.
Well, I mean, my former partner and I are no longer together. But if she was murdering people, I don't think you
Right.
know what I mean? There's a lot of things I'd be like, ah, she's not that type of person. If murder charges started flying around, I don't know that I'd be giving benefit of the doubt at that point. I'd like to see some hard
It's
evidence.
hard though, but because that it goes in because like I think my expertise in the true crime thing are kind of like the big serial killers, Dahmer, Bundy. Those are my specialties, we'll say. But it goes way more than that. You hear all the time about a husband that killed his wife or a mother that killed her children, and it's like it goes more into that as well as far as like learning about what happened. I think the goal ultimately for most people is try to understand even though you never will.
Hmm.
But also it's to look out for signs so that maybe in the future you can make a difference. But then again, when you are so close with someone, like a family member, friend, whatever, and you're just like, there's no way. Like you're gonna it's kind of like putting them on trial in your mind where it's like, obviously it's presumed innocent till proven guilty, you know. I could say that you murdered 18 people, you know, and
Right.
it not be true, and then you wouldn't want that, stigma on you, but, if you catch somebody with a knife in their hand and a dead body at their feet, then it's a little different, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, we're dealing with situations where these guys were professionals at it, where people that were doing this, as a career or hobby or something like that. And it's interesting that you bring it up again. You bring up perspective as if this is awareness for you. You're learning, you're trying to figure out and get better understanding for it. And for me, it just sounds like a horror story. I mean, there's almost this desire to just not be present with it. Like I'm a child when it comes to horror. I'm not great at horror movies to begin with, and anything that's based on true crime just Oh, I immediately shudder because I'm like, I don't want to know what happened to these people. I don't want to know these stories. Get me back to Lord of the Rings or somewhere where it's safe, or some classic boy fantasy that I can just enjoy. Like it's so hard to, because for me, and maybe this is to do with my personality, I start to try to connect with the victim more. I'm trying to be like, what is this like for that person? Or I start imagining my family members or loved ones going through it, and it just sounds heartbreaking. So I think, one of the things I'm slightly bothered by, and I wanted your perspective on, is I think there are now TV shows that we get a little close to, I don't want to say glorifying, but romanticizing the serial killer. Not the documentaries, I don't mind that, but some of the shows like Dexter or some of the other things where they're really just, but what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on fictions or fantasies where the serial killer is somewhat the anti-hero, or at least the
Mhm.
focus?
Um, that's an interesting topic for me because you mentioned Dexter. I love Dexter.
I think I
And
knew that before we started this.
yeah, I love Dexter, but Dexter, he like you said, he's the anti-hero. He is killing people that have killed or done other things that they shouldn't be doing. And so it's like you're rooting for him. And then the same on the same side of it, but a little bit different is like Joe Goldberg from You. I don't know if you know anything about You or have watched the Netflix series You.
I'd love to hear about it.
Oh my god, don't get me started, but it's very much it's
It's my job to get you started.
about about the anti-hero, but it's not the same in that Joe Goldberg, he's, like, basically stalking like, the first season, stalking a woman that he met in a bookstore that he works at, and then kind of learns everything about her and cords her in to where he has her right where he wants her, and then starts infiltrating her life. They start dating, and, like, she has no idea. It's all a false pretense to her, but in his mind, he's convinced himself that, like, they're soulmates and, everything's gonna work out, and then along the way, bodies start dropping.
Mm,
He's the guilty party, but these people aren't ones that, necessarily deserve to die. They didn't kill anybody else, they're just people that were in his way.
right, right. And that's, I mean, it's interesting when it's fiction, but the scary crossovers for me are, I have loved ones, that I care a lot about, that are, very scarily delusional, that think they're a deity, or that think they're someone else, and they're going through a really rough mental health journey. So for a lot of these, I think it always comes back to that personal experience for me when I hear about someone that's like Joker. Like Joker, the story, the movie Joker. I think that whole movie everyone thought was going to become the MAGA equivalent of like a rally point for young men, because we're going to see Joker and overthrow the government. And the whole time I'm just sitting there going, no, this is a mental health crisis movie. We're dealing with a very unfortunate story and character, and it's so crazy to watch. But for me, even with those, when it's the fiction stories, I start thinking about the people I know that are genuinely delusional. Or I had one, one relative whom I'll never name for the sake of discretion because we love him. Who was again convinced he had a soulmate, and convinced this was going to travel the country to get back with this individual and find them and go on a journey, and it terrifies me. Absolutely terrifies me, because you're right. Like, it's entertaining when it's fiction, but oh my goodness, is it scary when it's
Yeah,
someone you know. I can't imagine that perspective of it.
yeah.
But is that? I guess let me ask you this then, because I'm not a person coming from a horror background. Is it similar to the enjoyment when it's fictional murder stories? Is it similar to the enjoyment of watching fictional horror, like watching the ghost story movies and stuff like that?
It it depends on how it's done. So, like, obviously in a fictionalized scenario, Dexter, You, etcetera, yes, I for personally, I equate that, to the same kind of thriller, horror aspect of,
Hmm.
movies and stuff. Where it falls off for me, and I have a very big issue with it, are the shows and the movies that are done based off of a real story and that go way too far into fiction, or just way too far into kind of glorifying what's happened to the victims and stuff like that. So those I don't hold in high regard. I think like currently the best examples would go. And I will say, I haven't seen the Charlie Hunnam monster Ed Gein story. I haven't heard good things about it. And I already had low hopes because I did watch the Menendez brothers one, and that one was so bad. In contrast, I thought the first season with Evan Peters and Jeffrey Dahmer, they did really well with, as far as not fictionalizing things too much. However, there is still the conversation where it was said that victims were not kind of involved in giving permission for,
Mm,
information to be out there. So
that
that's
bums
where,
me out. Yeah, that bums me out a little bit.
yeah, that's where it gets into issues. And with Dahmer specifically, um that whole situation was so bad from the get-go because, he's operating as a gay man in the city, and he's finding victims of the same persuasion. But back in the day, nobody really took the time to care about the victims because they were gay. And so that kind of goes back into the opposite of what we were talking about before, like, watching these things, learning these things to get information for the future. These people were just pushing it off to the side in real time
Mm.
and not putting forth the same amount of caution to get awareness out there for possible victims in the future. Like, he spent a lot of his killing spree keep killing people while he was on probation for a incident that happened with a child who whose brother he later found and murdered.
Oh,
That family went through so much. Probably one of the saddest things I've I've seen, just how everything worked out with that poor family and what he got away with. And he wasn't even like you were talking about before, like, they're professionals and what they're doing and stuff. He wasn't that he wasn't hiding a lot. He lived in an apartment complex where he was murdering these people. He got reports for, like, smells of coming out of the apartments. He had, like I said, he was on probation, and nobody was putting forth any effort to try and figure out what was going on. And when he did finally get caught, he was very forthcoming with information, which is why we have a lot of information on him in the first place, because he just was like, "Yeah, it's over. Here's what happened." And yeah.
so this is a new angle that I've not thought about before, is that it's not just necessarily about being aware from the victim's perspective, like you're saying earlier, but also being aware societally, to be aware of what these stories do to people, what they do to families, what they do to neighborhoods, what the impact is,
Yeah.
and how it can get brushed under or brushed away. Like, it just can so easily disappear. And that's not ever really something I thought about. I guess that's a side to awareness that we don't think about, is the more you're aware of these patterns and behaviors in people, the more you can identify it. And I'm going to lean on you a little bit for this here. I haven't ever really watched a full crime show or documentary or anything, but I remember watching episodes, and I know you'll know what I'm talking about as soon as I get to it. It was a Netflix document. It was a Netflix.
Mindhunter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before I can even get into it, it's the one where the FBI agents were trying to learn how to profile the serial killers, and it was so fascinating from the Fed perspective of, like, them trying to build a program and get understanding about it so that they can more adequately predict and try to solve these crimes realistically. And I found that absolutely fascinating. Did you enjoy Mindhunter? What was your thought on that show?
Yeah. Me and the rest of the people who enjoyed Mindhunter are all very upset that we haven't got more.
Mm,
Because it goes back to kind of what we were talking about before, where it was a show, and of course, being a show, some things are going to be dramatized. But what they did as far as trying to tell a story of what was going on when they're trying to set up the FBI profiling back in the day and talking to, killers and getting all the information that they needed to start FBI profiling is just so interesting. And they took such good care of the story that they were trying to tell and put so much effort into trying to represent everybody in a true way. So it wasn't like, and some of the casting they did was crazy. The guy that played Edmund Kemper, he will never stop getting praised for it because he looked like him, he acted like him. It was like you had Edmund Kemper in the room with you, which was crazy.
Was that the larger gentleman that was bigger than life, it seemed like, who
Yeah.
converted to Christianity or something by then? Or was he the one that read the Bible and did the tapes and all that stuff? Or I'm trying to think of who that was. He just a very large gentleman, the big,
Yes.
like, and really wanted to talk about everything?
Yeah. He's
Oh,
like a
was
poet.
yeah, he hung out at the cop bar, right?
Yes.
That's okay, Kemp. Yeah, he's the one that hung out at the cop bar. Yeah, he was terrifying. Oh my gosh, when you looked up that in real life, you're like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that was accurate.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing too. It's like, you know, it's kind of common knowledge now for at least, my information that a lot of times in investigations, guilty parties will try to insert themselves to get information, and that's a perfect example. Back then that probably wasn't ever really thought of.
And he just hung out at the cop bar and would ask questions.
Yep, he's a perfect example of just hanging out, being crazy Ed, who nobody suspected. Meanwhile, he's murdering young women.
Oh, that's just yeah. I mean, that's one of those things where it's like it's a terrifying lesson, but it's a lesson worth
Mhm.
learning. It's a lesson worth like knowing what's going on. So like it's an interesting story. And I will admit I found that one just the acting alone was just magnificent on those episodes. Seeing him come to life, seeing that serial killer come to life was magnificent, but without glorifying him. It didn't make him seem like a good guy. It still made him seem like he should be in jail and was a serial killer. So there's no questions there about that. It was definitely a unique experience for me, not being a fan of that style of storytelling, to experience it, and kind of pushed me a little bit to want to be more aware about this stuff, which is why I'm glad that I'm having this conversation today. And I want to tee up another question for you here. That was something that I really enjoyed. Is there a current show or series or drama that you are following that is just kind of the front of your brain right now, the focus, the thing you're excited about?
Um, really, no. I've not gotten into honestly, these days, I pretty much stick to, like, YouTube, and, I'm very much on different sides of YouTube right now than true crime.
Do you
Um
watch JCS?
No.
Jim Can't Swim or something like that? Oh my lord, listen, if I can reference anything right now, if you're watching live and you get the chance to do this, JCS it's gonna sound like a boring, monotone, YouTube channel. There's a gentleman who narrates police footage of the investigation of murderers and criminals and we're talking like people that had their wife's body in a trash can. We're talking people that ended up like going to jail. He does innocent people as well, but the whole thing about his channel is he's trying to break down for you. Look at how they're acting. Look at what they're saying. Look at what they're doing. Look at their patterns of behavior. JCS on YouTube. I'm not affiliated. I don't get any money. It's an amazing channel, and it really focuses on this, not only the psychology of the criminal, but the psychology of the interviewer. How, there was a one that was, unfortunately, and I don't mean to bring this up, there was one that was a school shooter, and he showed the footage difference between cops in the room and him by himself. And the immediate behavioral shift as soon as a person entered the room, he started shaking and moving and acting like he was mentally unstable. And as soon as they left, boom, back to just content and sitting there. Yeah, it was fascinating to watch. So if you get a chance, if I can push you towards anything, JCS, which I don't know why it's called Jim Can't Swim. I guess that's just the name of the channel. It's a picture of just like a white profile with floaties on his arms, and it's very hard to miss. Some of the best psychological evaluations of content I've ever seen. JCS is one of my fun ones. So if I can, and you don't have to shout names out, but is there anyone on YouTube that you currently follow or you're currently excited about when it comes to that type of content?
No, I'll be honest. Um, as far as I don't know, like, I get most of my true crime information from documentaries specifically, and those are ones that I usually just find. Um, Movies on occasion, like, I am excited to go back and kind of compare and contrast the Ted Bundy movies. There was like one Ted Bundy movie that was terrible and totally fictionalized, and I'm putting off watching it because I hate it so much. But then the other one I love so much. And it goes back to what you were saying about Mindhunter, where it focused more on the FBI angle of interviewing Ted Bundy than it did kind of glorification of what happened to the victims, which I love. So I am excited for that. I would be excited if they would give us another Mindhunter season. They tease it sometimes, and then they're just like, whatever. Did you see the Ed Gein one? I didn't. I didn't.
Not bad.
We were talking about that earlier because I loved Monster season 1 about Dahmer. I thought they did a good job with it. Didn't like the Menendez brothers ones, and I haven't heard good things about the Ed Gein one as far as kind of representing what actually happened. It was more fictionalized, which I don't like when it comes to telling true crime stories.
Mel, Ben is an amazing journalist and a great guy on Substack, and I was given the privilege recently of guesting on one of his podcasts, so it's amazing to see him here and supporting. That's super awesome. But yeah, no, jump in with all of your thoughts and feedback on it, Ben. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
What I will say too is that like it's so interesting to hear how much of a cultural not phenomenon this is, but I feel like I'm the outsider. I feel like at times I'm the one that's kind of going like, oh, what is this murder trend people are on? And yet everyone knows like the major names and what's going on. And it's so cool to me to kind of see that as a unifier. So for me, this is like a learning experience. I'm sitting on the outside going, what do you people do this for? And it's interesting to watch, but I like that I'm learning the different perspectives of it tonight and kind of seeing that, no, there is actually value. It's not just content for clicks. Like there's an actual reason people want this information and that we should maintain it and that we should keep it. Like, so that is super valid. What do we got? Dahmer I loved, but that was the issue I had with Gein one as well, just unnecessarily fictionalized. Oh yeah, that kind of kills it, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And I think it takes away from what the intent is, because at that point you're just trying to capitalize off of a name that people know, and you're telling a fictionalized story. In that respect, you might as well just fictionalize a different character and make them do whatever you want and say at the end of it, you were inspired by this
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, I mean, we do a bit of a disservice when we swap out from reality because we're not giving people the actual story. I mean, there's representation, I understand. There's character swapping, and for the sake of fiction protection, I understand. There's certain reasons we want to do certain things, but at the same time, if the value of this art form of fictionalizing these characters is to make others aware, is to represent the realities for the victims, things like that, then I want it as close to the facts as I can get. I want to feel like the victims are honored and respected. I want to feel like the awareness is given rather than just the clicks. And I feel like over fictionalizing it for the sake of making good drama, when people die, there's enough drama in that. What do we really need to...
Exactly my point. Yeah, like you don't need. It's already a terrible story that has been told for decades that people are interested in, and so they sit there and they learn information about it. But like you were saying, where you're not tapped into that world. If you sat down and watched it, or somebody else like you sat down and watched it, you're not going to go out and be like, huh. Well, which parts of this were true and which parts of this were false? Because you're already just like traumatized by what you saw. So if you don't already have the backstory, you're not going to understand what was fictionalized.
So Ben threw a comment out that I'm learning now. So in middle school, to tout how weird I am, I actually read the Silence of the Lambs trilogy books. I read Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon. I went through the metaphase. I just liked reading as a kid because I was weird and I wore glasses. And back then it was pre-iPhone, so that made you different. And he says it's especially frustrating, this from Ben, because The Silence of the Lamb, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Psycho already dramatized the Ed Gein story. I didn't realize Silence of the Lambs was based off of an actual killer. I thought it was just Anthony Hopkins being Anthony Hopkins. I didn't realize that is that Buffalo Bill or what? Oh, so Buffalo Bill was the
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was just fictionalized. That's so new. That's gonna break my brain because I actually like that movie.
Well, Ben's totally right, and that's how I feel about it too. Because it's like it's one thing to use real life and come up with a whole broad story that you want to tell and make it scary, make it creepy, make it iconic, right?
Right. Well, Anthony Hopkins' portrayal of the Lecter character, to this day, I mean, if someone says fava beans, I'm already immediately, like when I watch classical artists or classical musicians mess up when performing, I immediately think that guy's getting eaten tonight. Like, there's certain things that it just. I can't unsee Anthony Hopkins. Even though it was only 15 minutes of screen time, he did such a good job. Yeah, and to Ben's point, Hopkins totally fictional. I like that. I can enjoy that because I know Hopkins being, totally fictional. I don't have to worry about it. But they're saying based being the active point there, man, that's just it. If Buffalo Bill was genuinely like act for act, scene for scene, close to a major killer, that would ruin it for me. If it's slightly based, I don't think I would be as frustrated by it, but that's one of those things that, oh my goodness, that's taken me out of. And to his question, have you seen the Hannibal TV show? I have not. Have you? And do you have thoughts on it?
I have not.
Ben, feel free to jump in. He as a fictionalized character, that's the kind that I like. I like a character that I know isn't based in reality. He can be evil in a separate world than ours and can be he can be the Deadpool. I'm fine with him being the Deadpool in a fictionalized world. I would hate it if we glorified an actual murderer or an actual serial killer. But I love it, and it's weird. Now I guess that I think about it, Hannibal Lecter is kind of a murder crime. I do love in the fictional sense because he is kind of that anti-hero just helping Clarice and trying to solve all the murders. And so, yeah, I guess in a fictional context, it is. Oh, no, Ben, you're getting a phone call later. It's a controversial statement, but Mads Mikkelsen does it better with the role than Hopkins. Well,
okay, first, I didn't know Mads Mikkelsen was in it, and now I'm probably gonna watch it because I love him. He's in one of my favorite video games. So
he is undeniably an amazing. I believe he was Andor. Or Rogue One. I think he played not Andor. Yeah, in Rogue One, he played the guy that designed the Death Star plans. And once I discovered him there, he is a fantastic actor. And so is Anthony Hopkins. He is amazing. Oh, this is going to be one of those oh man, this is going to be one of those things where it's like I'm going to have to watch it now, and I'm going to have to follow up later, and I'm going to have a discussion with Ben probably because Anthony Hopkins in that role was amazing for me. This comes back to childhood. I watched these movies and read these books probably years before I should have. Way too much exposure. Parents did not care at all. I was like, Dad, I'm going to go read Hannibal Lecter and watch the movie. And he's like, all right, leave me alone. In 11th, or not 11th grade. I was 11 years old. It was like middle school. I think it was 6th or 7th grade. It's definitely way too early exposure, but I'm going to watch these now. I'm probably going to go watch the Hannibal TV show. I'm going to want to do comparison now because it feels safe for me. Like knowing it's fictional, knowing it's in that universe, it's going to allow me to unlock the enjoyment of it. Whereas like the Mindhunters, I still watch with a touch of trepidation, a little bit of like reverence for it almost feels like a school assignment for me. It's entertaining. Yeah. Because I want to learn, but it does to a certain extent, like this actually happened. I got to kind of pay attention to this because this is relevant in a bunch of people's lives in an unfortunate way and just culturally across America. But yeah, Wilkinson, I'm probably saying it wrong. Mikkelsen, how am I supposed to pronounce?
I just said, I don't know. So I said Mikkelsen. I don't know if that's right.
Mads is amazing.
Right? I know it's Mads. So
Mads is absolutely amazing. So I'm going to have to watch that. If you see me keep looking off to the side, I'm very visually challenged. So I've actually got the live up on a second screen so I can read the comments because there's no way. To me, it's like blurry white lines on the phone from this distance. I got no clue. But you'd see like my nose. Side tangent. I love my sister most of the time. But when she FaceTimes, it's just this profile up. But it's just like her nose, her eyes, and upwards, and her eyebrows, and that's it. Because she covers the bottom quarter of the phone, and the next 75% of it is just her apartment or the bathroom ceiling because she FaceTimes from the bathroom. Like it's just, and I absolutely hate that. But we can't see, so most of the time we've just got the phone like right up here on us. The other times it's my mom using it as a compact.
Oh, yeah.
because she doesn't carry a compact anymore. I remember
No, it's true.
I'm old. I'm older than you, so don't say your age. I remember as a kid going into my mom's purse and getting her compact and looking at it or getting it for her. Um, and it's definitely the iPhones replaced that. She now uses it. If I FaceTime my mother, the first thing she does is check her hair, her face, and everything else because she's like, "Oh, I can look at myself right now." It's her new compact. Have you ever seen Manhunter? Brian Cox plays Hannibal. That's a quote from Ben. Have you seen that before, Manhunter?
My Manhunter? Oh, no, I have not.
Brian Cox plays Hannibal. Oh no, see, I have to like Ben's ruining my life because I'm gonna end up watching a bunch of this stuff now. My downtime's gonna I love you, Ben, but I'm definitely gonna end up now going through like a series of shows and having to watch it because Hannibal's such an exciting character for me. And so like that's gonna be super cool.
Yeah.
All right, so if I can, because I want to be conscious of your time, I know you are considering, and I'm not asking you to hard launch anything or go anything crazy. I know you've had some thoughts about some content you wanted to make. Would you feel comfortable speaking about that now?
Yeah, yeah. It's I do content creation, but I primarily been doing gaming content. However, I am starting a second channel for more pop culture stuff on YouTube. And my first video, which I will be working on probably this week into next week, is going to be a comparison contrast of two Ted Bundy movies, which we kind of talked on earlier. Ben, if you've seen these, let me know. One of them, which I did not like because it was another fictionalized account of Ted Bundy, which was terrible, was what did they call it? I had it in my head and then I started talking about it.
It happens to me all the time. All the
Yeah.
time. Train leaves the station hours before I can get there to
Yeah.
catch it all the time.
American something. Hold on,
American
I'll see if
Psycho,
I can
American
Google
Killer,
it.
American. I feel like those are
Oh, Ted
familiar.
Bundy, American Boogeyman.
Ooh, there
Okay.
we go. That's got a title to it.
Yeah, and it was that title is as cash grabby as the movie was, because it was a very fictionalized account of what they said Ted Bundy did, and it just wasn't true.
Romanticizing.
Kinda, yeah. One of my biggest issues, which I've only seen it the one time. It's Ted Bundy, American Boogeyman. So not horror story. They didn't really do any horror stories with American Horror Stories with Ted Bundy. But if I remember correctly, the beginning of it, I knew I was in trouble because it started out kind of like a Scream movie, and I'm like, I love Scream,
Oh.
but this like the dialogue was so bad, and it had him picking up a girl and like whatever their conversation was, it was just very bad and tacky. And at the end of it, they had him supposedly living on campus with the sorority girls that he later was to murder. And I'm like, this did not happen. This isn't even close
No.
to what happened. Um, but it also in 2021, there was a movie that came out, which is called No Man of God. And I remember that one off the top of my head because it was so good. And it's more on the FBI side, like Mindhunter. So it has an FBI agent going in to interview Ted Bundy and trying to get him to confess before his execution. And Ted Bundy, he got a lot of stays of execution because he was withholding information under the premise that he was going to help police find victims and et cetera. But eventually they gave up and they're like, no, you're getting the death sentence. You're donezo. But it follows that whole storyline of kind of trying to get the information from Bundy, but also follows through to, at the very end when he's executed and there's people outside of the prison camping out, barbecuing, wearing Burn Bundy Burn shirts. Like it's very encompassing. And you could tell by the end of it where it's like it's not trying to glorify what happened to him. It's showing you what happened and the consequences of his actions. But it's also an interesting story about, this FBI agent. He's getting to know him and trying to get information, and then Bundy starts to see him as a friend and kind of seeing the weird, like how weird the FBI agent feels about the whole thing.
Yeah, how do you sit in a room with someone like that and treat them so normally and just have a conversation with them without wanting to aggressively attack them or without wanting to just leave the room? Like, I'm not a naturally violent person, but if I knew someone had committed heinous crimes and they're proven guilty for it, I don't, you know, I don't know how I don't know how I would even begin to understand how to feel in that room. You know what I mean? That's gotta be such a trippy experience. Like, what how did they portray it? Like, did they do a good job of really expressing the conflict within the agents?
They did, and it's honestly the only Elijah Wood movie I've ever watched. He played the FBI agent. A guy, I believe his name is Luke Kirby, played Bundy, and he very much embodied Bundy like we were talking about with, the guy who played Edmund Kemper in Mindhunter. Like, just, like, you could s see it on screen, just like this aura. It's like almost like he was taken over by Bundy, but obviously he's not killing people. It's just like he channeled him so well that it was kinda creepy. And that's the thing, like, that's a good thing because like, Zac Efron did a Ted Bundy movie, and I'm not trying to knock on it at all, but looking at Zac Efron playing Ted Bundy versus watching Luke Kirby do it. I hope I'm saying the right actor's name. Um, but it's just different because you feel different. Like, I grew up, you know, watching Zac Efron on High School Musical, right?
Right,
Look
yeah.
at him like he's Ted Bundy and be scared.
Yeah, it's not gonna track for me either. That's not gonna work. Well, I do wanna highlight one comment from Ben. Is what I did like about the show, though, was the way it traced the gradual desensitization of Americans over time and how it's reflected in our entertainment. And oh my gosh, if that's not a valid point. I feel like today, if you told me there was a school shooting or there was a mass tragedy or there was something, it's not gonna phase me. I remember 9/11, I know you do too. I know you've gotta have a memory of it. I remember those mega moments in my life that have been really shocking, but I feel like of late, that's an accurate point. The desensitization is so real. I
Yeah.
feel like people are already depressed enough about life and the situations that we're all kind of currently in that that these that I guess Hollywood and or producers think they have to overglorify or push it a little bit further because if we just told a story about a couple co-eds getting killed, that might not be enough for people, and I wonder if that desensitization is playing into the drive and desire to create content that's more fictional for the effect. It's similar to the drug addict. Like we can start small and start simple, but over time I'm gonna need more and more and more of it to consume. Do you think that's happening in the modern portrayal of crime drama? Do you think there's that tendency to try to sensationalize to keep people's attention span, be it limited as is?
Yeah. Well, what's weird is just that whole idea because like I can give an example if we're going to talk like on the subject of school shootings.
Hmm.
Um when Columbine happened, that was before Scream 3 was released. They cut a lot of gore and things out of Scream 3 because of Columbine. They
Really?
they somehow got to that logic, and obviously one has nothing to do with the other, you know?
Right, they're not related. One's a horror movie about a
No. Nothing was gonna take place with, kids or school or even shootings. But they took the steps to, they kind of nipped most of the gore in the butt with
oh, they needed it.
Yes.
Mm,
So, I don't know why they did that. But then you have I don't know, like, I think it's even harder to have that conversation these days because of how free access to the internet is, right? For me, and I assume for most of us, if you see a documentary on anything, including Columbine or anything else, up the true crime alley, it's not gonna or nothing will hit you harder, you know? Growing up, I was too young to really understand anything about Columbine. I watched a documentary about it not too long ago, and I'm just kinda sitting there being like, "Oh my god," like, all of these things happen. So, I think it's kind of counterproductive, A, to to kind of hold back on fictionalized accounts of war. But I do think in the weird opposite, like, I guess, 20 years time passed, they decided to go the opposite way. Maybe you're right. Maybe they do go in and they're like, this, we see so much crazy stuff on the internet already. Why don't we just up the ante a little bit? But then you
Yeah,
have to I don't know. I don't know how we get to those lines of logic.
I don't have a lot of young people friends. I have a younger brother who's of a certain age that is younger than me, and I listen to how he's grown up, what he's seen. I remember the '90s. I remember life before the war on terror. I remember life before it sucked,
Mhm.
and I know you do as well. But maybe because I'm not going to assume your age publicly. Um, I remember that era, and I think for my younger brother, that has not existed. It has just been growing up in a world of further and further progression towards an uncomfortable state of being, and watching the elder generation above him, seeing the older brother and millennial being able to call back to those nicer times of, I remember when Disney drew movies by hand, and I remember when, you could actually afford things and food and life was nice. But I think for him, that desensitization factor of it's just always been this way, it really does something and plays on you mentally. And I think that for that generation, I really wish there was kind of a safe outlet and alternative. But it seems like the stories that they cling to and the things that they find do just have to keep chasing the dragon of getting progressively edgier because the reality already is. Like there's so much that's kind of rough for them. But that's not all that, not to say all doom and gloom. Life's not necessarily all like that. I find that there's still great new stories that are being created, great new fiction that's being jumped into. Like that's what I'm all about. And it's so exciting to still live in the current era. Things can be rough, but like the fact that I can just pull out my phone and go live with you and be like, "Hey, let's talk about murder. Let's talk about that as a genre." And before I let you go, because I'm not rushing you out either, we can talk as long as you want. There's one genre I wanted to touch on and get your thoughts on. I still cannot understand book talk and the dark romance genre that is out there. Do you have any insight into where that's coming from and what basically the things that can be said in some of those books would have me arrested in cuffs and in jail so fast? And I'm wondering, is that based on our earlier conversation? Is the female demographic that subscribes to, let's say, both of the, if we were to Venn diagram both of those contrasts that kind of like loop together, is there some relation to those things? Is it fantasy for them in the form of escapism, or is it what would your take be on that particular subgenre and how it relates to also the real life crimes and people that portray that type of stuff? Like, are they equating the two? It's got to be some type of difference in fantasy there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think, I mean, I'm not the best person to ask because I'm not on that side of TikTok, really. I'm not on TikTok a lot, but I think it goes back to escapism, and I think that goes into a whole other thing because these days, like, people are trying to escape in any way that they can. I think a lot of times with relationships and stuff, things don't exactly go the way you plan, and sometimes you're treated very badly, right? So if you are kind of imagining this fictionalized character and, pretending that you are the one that he's talking to, and he's kind of he's he's hitting the points of, like, being a bad guy, but he's, like, not being bad to you, you know? And I think that's a personal issue for me, so, maybe I'm speaking out of turn for the rest of the
Which
book
was
talk
which was not
girlies.
the goal. I wasn't trying to.
No, no,
I
no,
know that.
it's something I've been aware of for a while, but, like, generally, I'm attracted to men who don't necessarily treat me the bad or the best, but they don't treat me the worst either in comparison. So it's like this weird thing of, "Huh, I guess he likes me because he doesn't do this," or, so I think I can equate that in
We
that
are
way.
we are in a mutual group chat I will not name, and it makes so much more sense now because they're all mostly abusive, but at least they're not that abusive towards you.
Exactly, exactly. But that also goes to if you wanna take it and I'd like your opinion on this because I think it kind of goes hand in hand with escapism through AI. Because
Mhm.
a lot these days, a lot of people, they're not necessarily going to books or media to kind of imagine a person being with them. Like I might go to a Ryan Gosling movie and pretend that he's talking to me. They're loading up, ChatGPT or some kind of AI, and they're creating somebody that's sitting there just basically made to agree with everything that they say and totally rotting every sense of self that they could ever manage to have.
Yeah, that it hurts me on such a personal level for a couple of reasons. I love AI from a research perspective. Hey, I'm looking for jobs. Give me 20 of them right now. Let's throw the links up on the page. Let's go. And it'll do it. Amazing. Hey, here's a spreadsheet. Factor the following for me. Like, let me know what I can do. And it'll do it. And I'll double check the math, triple check it. And it's just right all the time. Absolutely love that. The horrifying part of AI, like if I could do anything for a living, if I could do anything for a living, I'd be a traveling storyteller. I would go from town to town, bar to bar, wherever the location is. I'd sit with people. I'd tell stories that I made up personally, and we'd have fun, and then I'd leave. The thing that kills me about AI is there's not a human on the other end writing these stories. There's no human on the other end caring about what you want. And the story that I'm currently writing and actually going to be launching on Substack is going to be about that very thing. Is what relationships are we building? What are we forming with AI? I get scared because my younger brother came to me today and said that I think that it was a day or two ago that men between the age of 18 to 25, I think 40% of them don't ask women out, don't engage in real relationships anymore because they're either socially unable or they're terrified or whatever the reasons are. That stat is just kind of growing. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned that AI will eventually be a crutch. Like you said, it'll be kind of that escapism people can turn to. It'll be that thing where people can get excited about it and have those dialogues and relationships, and that horrifies me. I don't want to lose the human art of connection. I don't want to lose the socialization that we get to do, even like this, where people can watch it now or later. Like I love that aspect, but the idea of nothing sounds more dystopian to me. Nothing sounds more dystopian than sitting at home and having a computer whose only job it is to make you happy respond to your chats like a person and be a girl or a boy or whatever you want. Like that's horrifying. That's the story I'm working on. I'm planning on this platform. Part of the reason I like Substack is I'm going to be doing a live performance of an audiobook, essentially. I'm going to be looking at this camera in this room, in this setting, with this whole setup, basically, and just start telling chapter one of that story. And I want to let people kind of discover the answers for themselves and take their own take on it. But to me, that's horror. To me, that's a horror that we are getting close to that's going to be terrifying only because AI doesn't have the same morals, risks, and weights that you and I do. Like, if you go out and murder someone, you go to jail. If an AI convinces someone to kill themselves, well, what happens to the AI? What do we do? Say bad, don't do that again? Like, what?
Yeah.
It's such a weird world that we're entering into, and I feel like we're all running. I feel like Jeff Goldblum watching Jurassic Park going, yeah, this is really cool, but this might kill a bunch of people. And that's kind of
Yeah.
that's where I feel like I am.
I had no idea that's where you're going to go with your story, but it's very interesting, but also very scary because AI is killing people. And I think, on my point of view, I, seeing my dating market, it's a lot of emotionally unavailable men, right? And I think what could be worse than having these men try to go to AI to validate everything that they say. Like in any relationship, friendship, family, whatever, you're never going to agree on everything. And you don't
No.
want to agree with everybody on everything because that doesn't help you. That doesn't help you grow. It doesn't help the other person grow. You have to be able to agree to disagree sometimes or, come to a mutual conclusion one way or the other and having something there that you can always rely on to say you're right, they're wrong is so detrimental to your emotional well-being.
And it's interesting you bring this up, and I'm totally 100% on board to go down this tangent because if life doesn't have tangents, you're not really living.
Yeah.
The thing that I find strange now is I'm starting to realize and hearing that people have begun using ChatGPT and Grok to come up with their opening lines on the dating apps now. and that's the new way of communicating. And I thought, I don't know that I'd feel okay. I mean, I'm single. I've never done the dating apps before, but the idea of like a girl being attracted to me because I had good AI prompts and she liked what they said. Oh my gosh, I don't know how to process that. Now, there's been a speculation. I was listening to a podcast recently. I've been doing a lot of research on AI and the current modern day effects. There was talk, I think a group of investors was trying to develop an app where you would get to know the app would build the AI, and then your AI would meet her AI, and they would discuss and see if they're compatible. And if they were compatible, they would pass back to you. It would be like swiping right or whatever, left or whatever it is. Like both AIs would swipe each other and say, oh, yeah, they'll work together. And then introduce the two of you. And I just thought, just leave me out back. Like, just put me in a chair out back.
I'm
I'll
imagining
be
now.
okay. I'm done. I'm checked out.
I'm imagining it now. That comes to fruition, and then all of a sudden, in like 10, 12 years, we're gonna have like double weddings of like the two people that met and their AIs. Like,
There was already a court case where a victim had passed. It was a hit and run. So the family of the victim, I believe for religious reasons, wanted to forgive the person that did it. And they argued that, hey, the guy that died would have liked this guy in real life and they could have been friends. And we don't want to, throw the book at him. But what was interesting to me was they then went to an AI development company and had an AI development company have the victim speak in front of the judge, the dead victim. They recreated him and had them go before the judge and say, hey, man, in another life, we might have been friends. And, I don't want you, we believe in mercy and all that and stuff, which is noble from the perspective of if you have a religious and moral conviction and you want to try to, apply mercy more than justice, you have the choice to do so. If I get run over by someone, don't make an AI of me forgiving them. I don't consent. I do not consent to that. If I get run over by a truck, bring an AI back of me saying, I would rather have been alive today.
yeah.
This is just, it's such a dystopian, I can't, and the judge was moved by it. I talked to my lawyer and he goes, oh, the lawyers have been manipulating courts since the beginning of courts. This isn't new, we're just using better tools. Which on its own merit was enough of I had to have a separate discussion with him. I'm like, what do you mean, buddy? I trust the justice system.
Oh.
Forget that. But I mean, just the idea that people would use AI to recreate the dead, to go before a judge, to persuade a case, I'm just like, no, can I check out now? Like, I don't know that I was meant to be born in this era. Can we go back to like libraries and books and, like, I don't know. I think we got to a certain point and then kept going, and I'm just going to start sounding like Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park. Like, did we stop and say, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
What is going on? No, I could get in a whole tangent and rant. I don't think it's going to take people's jobs, but I do think it's going to take their relationships. I don't think it's going to necessarily replace workers and people. I think it's going to replace connections and intimacy. And to me, that's just as terrifying. Just as terrifying.
Yeah, even more so because, I mean, obviously, we live in a world where you got to work to live, but the living is the good part. So the people that you're spending time with, the connections that you're making, that's the stuff that you're supposed to be looking forward to, not just pawning off on AI because you're lonely, And loneliness, it sucks, You're gonna be lonely, you're gonna be sad sometimes. I've as lonely and as sad as I've gotten, I've never even wanted to entertain the idea of relying on AI to make myself unlonely.
No, it's not a good thing. I will admit I did open a Ko-fi or coffee, and I'm going to put links in the description where I am so anti-AI that I would rather record audio and encouraging messages and send those to other people than I would actually allow AI to do that. So I'm gonna throw a link in the chat for that later. But just the idea, like you said, it might be generational. Maybe it's something for the young people. You and I know it's a computer. We know it's a robot. We know it's an algorithm, and not even a really great one that lies and hallucinates, worse than some of my family members. So how could we ever... I don't know, to me that feels so synthetic. How could I ever truly enjoy content knowing I paid $20 a month for it, I had to type it into a computer, and I'm watching tokens generated off an algorithm? I just...
Yeah.
There's something about that I can't feel... I'd still feel alone, for me personally. I would just still feel alone.
Absolutely, and my current, thing is, like, I've gotten into the habit of always listening to something, you know? I don't
Mhm.
often sit there and just type or, while I'm working or whatever. I've got, like, a YouTube video on, a podcast, a Twitch stream, whatever it may be. Like, I'm never, like, usually sitting there just living.
What happened
And
to
then I
us?
feel bad because then I'm like, "Oh, I'm looking forward to this stream or this video or something," and then I'm like, I just feel like I'm watching somebody else live and do things. Like, I feel bad because I'm not doing more
Yeah.
things.
I
So
I
I can't
realized
imagine supplementing that out to AI even further.
I realized it was killing my creativity. When I was a kid, I used to daydream through school. I used to draw scenarios and artwork for stories, and I used to daydream all through school, and I guess the rest of the kids were listening or something, I don't know, I was off on doing Lord knows what. I daydreamed constantly and would tell stories to myself constantly throughout the day, and just like you said, I have a JBL in the shower so that I don't have to take a quiet shower. I'm 35 years old, and I essentially have self-medicating Bluetooth in the shower so I can Russ listen to an economist's podcast about the manufacturing of potato chips so that I don't have to take a silent shower. But I'm worried that that's eating away part of me. Like, just like you're saying, I don't listen enough to my own thoughts. Like, how am I ever going to be a creative or a content creator if I don't sit and get bored anymore? If I'm not wondering about stuff, I guess this modern era is beautiful because you and I can be in hours away from each other having this conversation in front of other people, which is really cool. But I can turn all this off, throw a podcast on for the rest of the night, and not have to listen to my thoughts. And yeah, that's something that you hit the nail on the head for a thing that's been bugging me lately. It's like, I wonder if that's changing me a little bit.
Yeah.
I really do. I wonder what happened to the silence and how much that changes me.
Yeah. 'Cause it's like, I mean, and you might be the same way, it's like, as far as creativity or having thoughts of create or even just creating goals or whatever, it's like you have that 1 second where nothing's going on, and then you're like, "Oh, okay, I should get these things in motion," and then once you start doing that, you're kind of okay, but it's like, did I just waste 5 days watching a Twitch stream when I could have been doing this already?
Yeah, and I'll tell myself like, "Oh, it's audiobooks, so I'm learning, and it's podcasts, so I'm learning." Like a lot of the stuff I consume is infotainment. It's very educational, very informational. It's just me as a
Yeah,
person. But what did I produce over the past week? Like, I want to be the creative. I want to express ideas and get stuff out there. And yet, not that I don't mind supporting the people I love. Like, I love listening to the different perspectives. I love getting people from the other side of the aisle and listening to their perspectives. My favorite podcast in the world is on Substack. It's Fifth Column. I love listening to those guys, getting their perspective. But I have a friend, Lewis, that's probably here, that if he'd have $1 for every time I said I was going to launch the book this week or launch a chapter this week, I think he'd be richer than Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos at this point. Like, it would be one of those things where he's like, your anxiety and just, it always gets in the way. But also, I wonder, do I even give myself the time to be the creative, to get bored and wonder about it? And man, you're right. 100% you're right, is I've got something in my ear all the time. That's such an interesting observation, and what an interesting time to bring it up. Because, yeah, if we're not doing it with AI, we're doing it with content we're just consuming. Like, there's always someone else's thoughts ruminating through my brain. I wonder what that does.
yeah, it's probably not great. But, I mean, also it can spark creativity. I think, a lot of the things like we were talking before about, like, content creation and stuff, a lot of the ideas that I have been inspired from other people, like, whether it be how to edit a video or, setting up a stream or something like that. Like, obviously not copying one for one, taking my own, ideas and making them happen. But it's like I wouldn't have thought about it if I didn't have this point of reference. So I think it can be good and bad. I think maybe it's kind of one of those things where it's like you have to just be on to yourself
Mm,
because you might have all these things you want to do, like you with your stories and everything, and then me with my content creation, and it's like I think we get in our heads too much because, like, I don't know about you, but I can be a bit of a perfectionist. So then I'm like, I'm afraid to start it because then I'm afraid it won't go as the way that I want. And
If
then,
Lewis is here listening, I imagine very much that he would know exactly what you're talking about from listening to me say, "It's just not good enough yet."
yeah.
I can get it a little better, or like, oh, I added this, or now I've tweaked it further, and it's just like, all right, well, at a certain point, get it out there. Like, just shut up and do it.
Right.
Just shut up and do it.
Yeah, that's the big battle. I think one thing that I've learned recently is like you can do your best. It's never going to be perfect. You're going to forget things. Like I used to, even if I was editing something, if I would forget one little thing and I already had the whole video ready on YouTube, I would delete it, go back, re-render the video, re-upload it. Like I'm that
Oh,
bad. And I've gotten to the point where it's like it's fine. Nobody's going to notice but you. Like, just let it go.
I need to take that lesson with me. I really do.
Yeah.
And speaking of this, I want to wrap here. But what I want before I do that, I want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything about you you'd like to shout out? And you can DM me later, and I'll throw stuff in the comments, like when I post this, and I'll make sure all your links and subtrees and all that are available when we repost this content. But is there anything that you've got coming up you'd like to shout out now before we kind of wrap?
Um, I There's YouTube, for true crime. There will be a video out hopefully next week, kind of going into what we were discussing before about comparison of 2 Ted Bundy movies. I'm excited for that, a little nervous because 'cause it'd be my first foray into kind of talking about pop culture content, so
Mm.
there's that. I'm excited, but, I did put links in my profile on here if anybody wants to check it out, and that's it.
Awesome. Mel, thank you very much for coming. For those of you watching at home live, thank you so much for participating, for commenting, Ben. Uh, for those of you that are watching afterwards, please go ahead and I do read the comments. I do reach out and engage. I'm hoping next week to start launching the story series. It's going to be live on Substack, and then they get uploaded afterwards as VODs, and I'm going to put them on YouTube and stuff like that too. But I'm just kind of excited to give it a try. It's a bit of performance art. We'll see how it goes. But Mel, it's been a real pleasure tonight. Thank you so much for coming on board. I've had so much fun, and I hope to do it sometime again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I had so much fun and I appreciate the conversation. I'm excited to see what you do next.
Thanks, and I'm looking forward to being a subscriber on your second channel.
Yay.
All right, everyone, have a good night. Bye bye.